G'day guys, it's Nathan here from How to Get Away. Are you considering buying a property with a partner, sibling, or a friend? In this video, we're going to deep dive into the complexities of co-ownership, sharing real life stories, expert advice, and practical tips to help make an informed decision. Embarking on the journey of buying a home is exhilarating. It's filled with house tours, budgeting, paperwork, and daydreaming about the ideal furniture. However, amidst all this excitement, it's easy to overlook your potential future changes and circumstances, such as what if you were to break up or part ways with the partner in crime you're buying this property with. While it may not be as thrilling as picking out your dream couch, it's crucial to discuss how you'll structure the loan and property ownership, as well as addressing some potential future scenarios. This will make things smoother in the long run. It's a tough conversation to have, but it can avoid leading to complications down the line. Consider the story of Joanne, whose name's been changed for privacy. She'd always dreamed of owning her own home, and when she worked hard to save up her deposit, she was able to contribute up to 65% of the deposit for a unit in Melbourne, along with her partner, who was with her for 3 years, contributed the remaining 35% with the help of his parents. However, when their relationship ended, they found themselves in a bit of a pickle. They had a difficult situation regarding the property and they weren't sure what to do. Despite the breakup, they both still wanted to live in the unit because they couldn't come to an agreement of who should stay. Joanne is now saving up to pay out her ex-partner as the property's value has decreased since they bought it. This story really highlights the importance of considering different approaches to money and property ownership early in your home buying journey. It's hard to predict what might happen in the future, so be prepared and have everything laid out black and white from day one. There are some alternative ways you can also set up the loan, such as property share, and we'll discuss further and how this works later in the video. When buying a property together, you can choose between joint ownership and tenants in common. For a joint ownership, both parties will own 50% of the property regardless of how much they contribute by the way of deposit. On the other hand, tenants in common will allow for the differences and split the ownership according to the percentage that you choose. For instance, if one person were to contribute a $200,000 deposit and the other partner adds $100,000 for, say, $1 million purchase, the ownership split could look something like 55% and 45% respectively. This arrangement can be beneficial for estate planning as well, as your share can be passed on to someone else, such as children from a previous relationship, in the event something untoward were to happen. However, buying as tenants in common still means you're jointly responsible for the loan. So if one partner does default on their repayment, the other party actually has to come good and make up for the lack of repayments and risk your credit file. You could get a bad credit rating because you're jointly and severally liable for that loan. This is where property share can be handy. We're going to discuss this a little bit later in the video, so stay tuned. However, it's important to be aware that in the event of a relationship breakdown, even having tenants in common split might not necessarily be in accordance with the agreement upon percentages due to family law considerations if you're a couple. So to avoid such complications, experts recommend couples to have a binding financial agreement drawn up. This document is prepared by a lawyer. It outlines how couples' assets will be divided if they split. It can detail who'll pay the mortgage and what will happen if you divide the property up. Even if the agreement is set aside in court, it can serve as evidence as the other party's intention when it was made. When a relationship ends, there are a few options regarding the property. One party can buy the other party out, you can sell the property and repay the loan, or if you're on good terms, you can rent out the home until the property market improves. There are several points to consider when embarking on your co-ownership journey. We're going to talk about the pros and cons in a minute, but if you do find value in this video, please consider hitting that subscribe button, as it does really help out the channel. And a big thank you to all our subscribers for your support. Inspires us to create more content we hope you enjoy. So let's talk about the pros and cons of each. One of the pros of purchasing with another person is it is easier to get a loan. Applying for a mortgage as a couple can increase your chances of approval. Your combined incomes can result in a more competitive interest rate and larger borrowing capability, especially when both partners have good credit scores and stable income. The second is that you might be able to get into the market sooner. When you join your savings, you have higher high borrowing power, it means you can get into the market today rather than waiting, which might also be beneficial if your borrowing capacity is low on your own. It will avoid you being displaced from the community because you can get in the market at a higher price when you go jointly rather than individually. Let's talk about some of the negatives or the cons. The first impact will be your borrowing capacity. When you buy together, the bank will consider that loan to be 100% your responsibility because you're jointly and severally responsible, which means in the event that you look to apply for a loan on your own, that loan will always be considered as 100% your liability, which can impact your ability to borrow in the future. This is where property share is quite useful. I'm going to run through that in a minute, so stay tuned because we'll cover through this and how it might actually improve your ability to borrow down the track. And the second risk of buying with someone else is the risk of separation. It's essential to have a clear agreement in place when entering into a co-ownership agreement. Despite the best of intentions, relationships can break down and it's best to be prepared ahead of time. If you are considering purchasing with a sibling, relative, or a friend, it's important to consider your option around property share. Property share, also known as co-ownership, is where you co-guarantee or cross-guarantee you and your partner and your friend in the transaction. It's a bit different to purchasing with someone outside like your partner or your spouse, but effectively allows you to keep your finances separate. Essentially, there's two loan facilities on the one property and each loan facility is fully secured and responsible by that one person. Let's illustrate this with an example. Suppose there's a couple, John and Sarah, and they have a brother named Bob. They decide to buy a property together, but they want to manage their finances and include their mortgages separately. So they find a property for the value of $600,000. To meet their deposit requirements, they each are required to contribute, call it $24,000 or 5% of the required amount plus costs to purchase the property. The bank assesses all three as equally responsible for the property. If approved, John and Sarah as one unit and Bob will each have a loan for $276,000 each. The mortgage split doesn't have to be equal. For instance, John and Sarah might decide that they're going to contribute more of a deposit, thus owning a larger share of the property, and this would result in them receiving a larger portion of the sale proceeds and rental income, and effectively maybe have a lower loan amount. It is crucial that each party seeks their own financial legal advice, and a solicitor can draft a co-borrower agreement to clarify the property ownership and ongoing costs and rights of the property. The best thing is that qualifying for a property share loan doesn't require any extraordinary requirements. You will need a sufficient deposit, stable employment history, good income and asset positions with a good credit history, and a co-borrower who shares your goals of property ownership. The best part about this property ownership is that your loan is your loan. You're not responsible for your friends or other siblings' part. So if there's a default on the loan repayment, your loan doesn't get affected and it affects their credit file. You do need to be aware though that the property is secured against the property that you all own. So in the event that your brother, sibling, friend or family member doesn't pay their loan and the bank launches proceedings to repossess, your loan would be affected. This is where you need to get legal advice, but the best part about the property share is that you're only responsible for the loan that is in your name, and when you do finance applications in the future, your borrowing power isn't going to be reduced by the fact that they consider 100% a loan jointly and severably like we talked about earlier. Now, when you apply for a property share loan, your borrowing power will be determined by your own ability to service that loan that you're responsible for, and vice versa. So you will need to have a decent income to make sure you can service the loan that you're going to be responsible for. The best part about it is you can set up the loan the way you want it, because remember, the loan that you're responsible for is yours. So if you want to fix yours and your friend wants to go variable or vice versa, there's no responsibility. You don't need to worry about what they're doing because you're only responsible for the amount that you've applied for. And whilst you might not be responsible for the other person's debt, you are co-guaranteeing each other. So the security is at risk in the event that the other party doesn't pay their loan. And this is where a co-ownership agreement is essential to prevent potential disputes in the future. Get a qualified solicitor to help you draft up an agreement which outlines what happens when one party wants to exit the arrangement. This is where you can also add clauses such as a time period that you're going to keep the property, the plan for maintaining and the costs associated, mediation or dispute resolution clauses, and the division of ongoing costs can all be included in this agreement, so you definitely want to make sure you have it in order. Buying a property with a sibling or a friend can be a great way to split the costs and increase your borrowing power. However, it's not without its risks, so it's important you get legal advice here before you look about anything. I want to share my thoughts here. Co-ownership of property can be a great way to enter the market, especially with these challenging times where property prices are soaring. By pooling resources with a partner, sibling, or a friend, you can potentially afford a better property and get into the market sooner than you might otherwise be able to. However, it is crucial to have a clear agreement in place to avoid potential complications down the line. Remember to like, share, and subscribe to stay informed with all things property and finance. And while the current market conditions are a challenge, with the right strategy and guidance, it's possible to get into the property market and secure a loan that suits your needs. As always, feel free to reach out with us here at Hunter Galloway. We specialize in property share loans and working with co-borrowers getting into the market. So reach out with us directly at huntergalloway.com.au or call us on 1300 088 065. Guys, I'd love to know in the comments section below the next thing you'd like me to talk about. Always looking for suggestions and ideas for things to talk about next. So leave a comment below. We'd love to hear from you. And until next time, we'll see you then.